Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're sorry about the dog barking in the background, Zoom stuff. Welcome today. We're really excited to have you here for this session. And this is one which is quite dear to me because I love this organization. So welcome to the Migration Summit. The Migration Summit 2022, organized by MIT Refugee Action Hub, NAMO, Karam Foundation, Paper Airplanes, and the MIT Abdul Latif Jameel World Education Lab, is a month-long global convening designed to build bridges between diverse communities of displaced learners, universities, companies, nonprofits, and NGOs, social enterprise foundations, philanthropists, researchers, policymakers, around key issues and challenges and opportunities for refugee and migrant communities. This year, we're exploring the theme of education and workforce development and displacement through virtual events hosted by participating partners around the world. My name is Lorraine Charles, and I'm the Executive Director of NAMO and one of the co-organizers and co-chairs of this summit. And I'm really excited to have Talent Beyond Boundaries today. We know livability is becoming increasingly recognized pathway for refugees to attain a durable solution. With only 1% of refugees globally being resettled, the need for other pathways, also known as complementary pathways, is increasingly important. Talent Beyond Boundaries has been set up in this context, but not only to facilitate refugees being relocated, but also lobbying governments to open this path. The successes seen in Canada, Australia, and the UK are testament to the viability of this model. Today, Talent Beyond Boundaries will share the status quo of livability and take us on an exploration of what the future could look like. Well, really have you, Patrirck, Noura, and Fadi. Welcome. Over to you, Patrirck.
Thank you so much, Lorraine, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whatever time zone you're in. Just bear with me for 1 second while I just quickly share my screen. Okay, so yeah, as I said, welcome everyone. The title of today's session is Evaluating Access to Labour Mobility Pathways for Refugees. It will be partly some information and discussion that we'll be sharing, and then we're going to go out into some breakout rooms. And really, the purpose of today is to have a discussion amongst everyone here about really what are the hurdles and in terms of refugees accessing labour mobility pathways, and what do we need to be thinking about as we scale this solution moving forward. So just in terms of introductions of the presenters and the panel today, my name is Patrirck O'Leary. I'm the global program director at Talent Beyond Boundaries. I'll hand quickly to my colleague Noura just to say a quick introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Noura Ismail. I'm the Middle East director at Talent Beyond Boundaries, and I'll pass it over to you, Fadi.
Thank you, Noura. Hey everyone, my name is Fadi Shiluhi. I'm currently an associate manager with Accenture Australia, and I'm one of Talent Beyond Boundaries' early success stories, currently located in Sydney.
Brilliant. Thanks, Fadi, and thanks, Noura. And we'll be hearing from Noura and both Fadi shortly. Before we do, I just wanted to take some time to talk a little bit about the program and where we've got to today, not just Talent Beyond Boundaries, but the partners and the other organizations that we've been working with, and then we're really mapping out what we're looking to do in the future for this really important solution for refugees. So, really the Talent Beyond Boundaries, our mission statement and our what we're looking to do is really we envision a world where forcibly displaced people can use their skills to move to secure their futures. We were founded in 2016, and our work has really progressed since that point onwards. It's quite simple. There's 3 kind of key areas I like to kind of connect. Skilled refugees need jobs. We're all very aware here of the critical need and what's happening in the world. Only apparent really from at the moment looking at what's happening in Ukraine and Afghanistan over the last 18 months, more than ever. Employees need talent You know, that's, you know, across the globe, we're seeing that as well. And then really we connect them. It's very simple. You know, skilled refugees need jobs, employers need talent, and that's where we and other organizations come in. You know, before we move forward, just to make a quick acknowledgement, you know, this work's been done for a while from many partner organizations, but recently there was an announcement of the Global Task Force on Refugee Labour Mobility that was launched 2 weeks ago, really expanding that safe pathway for employment that we're talking about as a key priority for the UNHCR and the global community. The Government of Canada, Australia, UNHCR, ICC, IOM, and Fragment, and Refuge Point are the core members of this global task force. And I say that only to show you that, you know, we're at this point now where it is significant amongst the global community, and there are many, many players, both in the private sector and outside, who are supporting this really important initiative. For us today, just at TBB, I think it's really important to look at, this is an employer-driven model, and we've had 94% of our employers who we've worked with have said that they've already hired and they will likely recruit with us again. So it's working, that's the point. 100% of employers that we've surveyed said that they would recommend this program to other employers. So we can rest assured in knowing that this program, what we're doing, not just in Canada or Australia or the UK, it is working, and the employer-driven model, employers are happy, and, you know, there are, you know, as we're aware, it is a solution that is working. On the right, you can just see you know, a selection of the different employers that we've been working with, from huge employers in the UK like the NHS to smaller employers like Ice River Springs or Davit Tools in Canada, and then larger employers like Accenture and CGI. So really skill sectors, skills across the board, and all employers really, you know, keen and eager to engage in this program. As well, you know, I mentioned this at the beginning. This isn't a TBB project. We are working with so many partners to make this happen, and just a few of the partners, you know, listed on the screen that we're working with, who, you know, really help make the whole of this process work, from Miles for Migrants, who help with the flights, to Fragment with the immigration process, and then other partners such as Jumpstart Refugee Talent and Refugee Talent, Talent Lift, Refuge Point. You know, we're a community of NGOs that work together. To date, in terms of what we've done, we have secured 675 refugees with durable solutions through the TBB program. Of that number, around 475 have been within the last 12 months. So that's an indication that this solution is rapidly scaling. So we're at that point now where it's really, employers are getting on board, governments are as well, and we're really seeing a significant growth. A large part of that has been through the healthcare pilot in the UK, but we're also seeing all of the other programs really growing, and a great amount of employer participation. You know, outside of the durable solutions and obviously the relocation, there are other services and benefits for candidates who are registered the program, including resume reviews, help with mock interview processes, and other areas as well. So just a few candidates here that have gone through the program. You know, we have a candidate called Mariam, who's a personal care worker who's now relocated in Nova Scotia, a trained nurse as well. And you can see there from a photo of her 2 children that came to Canada in July last year. We have Omar Taha, who's a support advisor working for a very large tech company in Toronto. He relocated in January 2021 with his wife. And then we also have Ibrahim, who is now in the UK as a water engineer. Came from Syria. He's now, living in regional Australia, not the UK. So just, you know, an example again of the different skill sets of our candidates who register. So really, we're working with employers across the board. So in terms of the visa programs to date, we have 3 key visa programs, destination countries that we're working with at TBB, and that's the Canada pilot, which is a commitment at the minute of 2,000 primary applicant places. We're working under what's called the EMPP. We have Australia, which is a skilled refugee pilot labour agreement of 150 primary applicant places. And then we have the UK programme, where we have both a healthcare pilot and a displaced talent pilot as well. So really, they're the three key programmes that we're working with at the moment through TBB. And then this year, we're looking for expansion as well. So we're working with Ireland, Portugal, and Belgium. We're drawing from the lessons from our existing programs, and we're looking to bring 250 people in, partnering with Fragment, IOM, and the European Commission to really kind of pursue new destination countries in Europe. And then also looking at how we can support Ukrainian refugees as well in that continent, have them register as well through our existing programs. The other large continent that we're working on, obviously in North America, is the US, where we're looking at the moment to explore new legal pathways for skilled refugees to come into the US. So we're at the early stages of having discussions around the pilot program and what that may look like. But the intention really is in the next 12 months or so to explore and see if we can find a pathway and a pilot to launch in the US as well. So as we sit back and think, it's really important for us to look at lessons that we've learned as well over the time that we've been working at this since 2016 from other visa schemes, and what we've done in Canada and the UK and Australia, and how can we adapt that. So just a few things on here that have worked for and that we've adopted across and we've pushed for in different programs. One of them is a reduced fees and waiver of certain financial requirements to overcome financial barriers. That was a big thing that we did in Canada as part of phase 2 of the EMPP. The government of Canada agreed to waive certain financial requirements, which has made it a lot easier for candidates to access the programs. Another one that I wanted to flag was a reduced English language requirement in Australia. That was something that's made the program a lot easier to access for a lot of our candidates. And then there's a few more on here, but the other one that I really wanted to flag was that was consistent across all 3 countries was the priority processing of visa applications. So both with the UK, Australia, and Canada, we've been very lucky in working with the different governments and having a priority processing time. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is an employer-driven model, and it's really important that employers are looking to help and assist, but obviously there is a need to fill a talent shortage. So having a quick and consistent processing time has been really beneficial for all of our programs. So just really quickly in terms of how does this work, the process. There's kind of really kind of 5 main key pillars. The first one is the shortlisting of candidates. So, and as I said, really important. It is an employer-driven model. Their employers will come to us. There is a shortage. They are looking for certain roles in the workforce. They will provide us with the roles they're looking for. We will then, based on the job description, we will shortlist candidates for the employers. The employers will then facilitate remote recruitment. So through video interviews, they will do skills validation. And we at TBB and our team, we have a team in the Middle East who really help with all of that. Will help the candidates in terms of preparation for their interviews if they're selected, and making sure that they're ready to go to meet the employers. The employer will then have a decision to make a job offer and send a contract. We would then speak with the candidate and make sure that they have all of the information to make an informed decision. On the hopeful basis that the candidate accepts a job offer, we'll then start the visa application process. We would then work with our immigration provider, and we would support both the employer and the candidate to go through that immigration process. We would monitor it along the way and ensure that there is a smooth visa processing. Before the visa is approved, we would help the employer prepare for the arrival of the candidate. We'll connect them with settlement services, and it's slightly different depending on the destination country, but we'll make sure that the candidates have a safe and supportive landing, and that are supported both by TBB and the employer. And the last one is just really the follow-up and the surveying. And for us, we are building this out, and as I referenced, we're scaling this, so it's important for us to make sure that we're monitoring and checking in with candidates and employers, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what can we be doing to kind of have key learnings from this pilots that we're in. The end goal is to continuously scale and make sure that these programs are permanent. So having that those check-ins and those follow-ups are really critical for us. So the last thing before I just hand off to Noura is, how does it work also in terms of the candidates? We have, and I've referenced it, a talent catalog. Candidates can sign up to a talent catalog. Currently, we have, I think, just over actually 41,000 candidates that are registered in our talent catalog. And you can see the skill sets are really varied. It can be anything from trade workers to healthcare workers to tech professionals. We have an incredible amount of talent on that. And I'll take the moment maybe to hand to Noura to kind of give some more information on our candidates and to say a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks so much, Patrirck. So yes, exactly, just as Patrirck noted, so every refugee candidate that we work with has to register on our skills database, which is called the Talent Catalog, which again is a comprehensive tool we've built that captures both their professional and educational backgrounds in detail. So this is a glimpse of the database, which now includes well over 40,000 refugees across the world. Just because our program began in Jordan and Lebanon, that's where the majority of registrants are from and where a lot of the data is represented. But we also have refugees registered all across the world, including in more countries in the Middle East, including Iraq, Egypt, Turkey, as well as in Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Kenya, countries across Latin America, and more. Over 150 occupations are represented, and based on workforce surveys, 7 of the top 10 occupations listed are in high demand in the international labor market, including nursing, IT, skilled trades, and others. And 40% of registered candidates, just to note, report having a bachelor's degree or higher. I will note there is often a misconception that the candidates we work with in this solution in general is for people of certain skill levels and from generally white-collar professions only. However, it is in fact for people with a range of employable skills. In addition to matching nurses and software developers and engineers, we've also matched butchers, bakers, welders, mechanics, and a number of other professions. So it's not just those who are coming from one particular background or industry, but it's quite a range. And so just to reflect a bit on the key principles that we follow as an organization in designing these pathways for refugees and really trying to connect them with a solution through labor mobility. So the first is just that we very strongly advocate that this solution in no way is a substitute for other humanitarian or resettlement streams that use different selection criteria. It's very much additive and genuinely complementary, and really just an additional outlet to allow even more people to reach security and safety. It's also, as Patrirck emphasized, very much an employer-led process and obviously quite skills-based. We believe that employers know best who would make their ideal hire, and the entire model is very much driven by demand. So we're trying to make things as streamlined as possible so that more businesses can participate. We also strongly advocate that refugees be able to decide and access whatever solution is best for them, and try to give them that option. We're also putting them at the center of our design process to help us to continue to effectively build and scale. And then finally, just protection. Of course, ensuring protection is key to everything that we're doing. And so all schemes developed must have adequate protection safeguards in place. And they must also be built to lead to a durable solution. So whether that's in the form of permanent residency or citizenship in a third country. So keeping all of this in mind, right now we're at this very exciting tipping point in our solution. As Patrirck noted earlier, we've really already profoundly kind of proven concept by securing placements and solutions for hundreds of refugees. We have major businesses making commitments as well as governments to expand labor mobility, and over 2,000 visas to fill quite quickly. But of course, to move forward in the way that we really envision at scale, there are a number of barriers that we really need to overcome to make this solution as accessible by as many refugees as possible. So this year, we actually engaged in a very comprehensive study in partnership with the Durable Solutions platform to both identify and also examine a lot of these barriers. And we were doing so particularly at the source level. So from Jordan and Lebanon, and just for the research, we specifically focused on Syrian refugees. We surveyed almost 600 refugees, both through a digital survey, and then we also met with a portion directly through one-on-one interviews. And then we also spoke with dozens of actors and stakeholders currently in this space, ranging from embassy officials to local NGOs, UNHCR, and a number of other partners. And through the research, we identified kind of 4 barriers or categories of barriers to unlock. We have barriers relating to engagement and outreach, so in getting refugees to fully become familiar with this solution and to trust in it as a legitimate option. The second was barriers at the recruitment level. So when refugees are engaging with employers or getting put in front of employers and then engaging with them. We have barriers relating to the skilled visa processing, so after they've received a job offer. And then finally, barriers to exit and departure as they attempt to move to their third country. So we'll touch on a few of these in the next few slides, as well as a few recommendations. Although if you're interested in reading the full report, that should come out hopefully next month. And we'll be having a number of formal dissemination events, so you can look out for them on our social media. But so just to start, in terms of barriers related to engagement and outreach, again, I just handpicked a few to discuss today. But there were definitely a number of key issues we came across where really they were just in relation to a major information gap about labor mobility. So in the study, 76% had no idea that it was even an option. And among those, almost half actually assumed immediate ineligibility. Many of them thought that they don't have the right skills that an employer abroad would want to consider them for, or as refugees they don't have the right documentation to be put forward, so it would never work. So they didn't even think to put themselves forward for any of these opportunities. Another interesting fact is that 77% of those who had heard about labor mobility assumed that family members could not travel with them, so they immediately didn't want to be considered for opportunities. Of course, in the schemes that we've helped build, that's not the case. Immediate family members, including spouses and children, can, of course, also benefit and move through the process. Another big issue was just regarding lack of information that was available to them. Currently in Jordan and Lebanon, TBB is really the main and only implementer of labor mobility in the Middle East at the moment. And while we're working with partners to better inform them about the solution, there still remains quite a bit of uncertainty among them, which of course means that not enough information is being spread to the refugees themselves. Finally, another really important point to touch base on is just basic issues relating to concerns that labor opportunities are a scam. About a third of the respondents that we worked with highlighted this issue quite strongly. Scams targeting refugees and promising of relocation have unfortunately become quite common. And so to really establish trust and to show that this is a genuine and safe option is something that we've learned will take time, but definitely a hurdle that we need to overcome. With that said, sorry, I'm not done on the last slide. Just quickly two last points, but very interesting points. Once we did engage with the refugees and fully brief them on the solution and their eligibility, their ability to bring their families, and established quite a bit of trust, 96% indicated that they were strongly interested in accessing labor mobility routes. And then another very significant finding is that almost half who were considering an irregular journey, so for example, from the Middle East to Europe, said that they were now less likely to pursue it merely on the promise of labor mobility. And I just think this is such a powerful finding and a very powerful statement to the potential impact of enabling displaced people to leverage their skills to secure their futures once they're made aware that it's an option. So moving on in terms of barriers at the recruitment phase, there are actually quite a number. And again, this is just a short list. But just to note, so there was agreement that there's a lack of career guidance currently, again, specifically in Lebanon and Jordan. 65% of respondents noted that there was lack of access to international career guidance, and without support, 77% that they would be too afraid to apply to opportunities on their own. Our goal is that, and I know there were some questions in the chat, our goal is that refugees don't need to depend on TBB to match them for job opportunities, that they would be able to do it on their own in the future. And we would help facilitate the mobility process and getting them through with the visa processing. But we realize that there's still quite a ways to go until they feel comfortable enough to be able to do that on their own. So a lot of investment needs to be made on that end. There's also many respondents noted that there are numerous NGOs offering vocational trainings, but very few are aligned with in-demand positions in third countries. We actually, it was interesting, had a group of refugees I recently met who had received scholarships in Arabic literature training, which is wonderful, but one has to wonder on the number of jobs available both in domestic and international labor market in those positions. So there is definitely need for a more targeted approach in both countries. Another issue, which will be especially relevant for those who are in Lebanon, while interviewing, a third of respondents noted that they faced internet issues mid-interview. And while some employers are understanding, others are not, and this can negatively impact their chances of moving forward in an employment opportunity. We also discovered that over half of the respondents don't have access to computers, which generally is not a major issue because the vast majority have cell phones, working phones, so they can conduct their interviews that way. But that does make CV building quite difficult, test prep also very challenging. So there's definitely a need for access to certain technology. Another more kind of systemic issue has to do with fear of loss of skills, largely due to the restrictive legal environment that bars refugees from working in Jordan and Lebanon. While many have extensive education in a field, they've possibly been out of work for almost a decade just because of their circumstances. And this then makes it very hard for them to enter any recruitment process. A number have also been forced to jump around between different jobs while working, often illegally or irregularly. And some employers will see this on a CV and interpret it as a lack of reliability or not quite grasping their situation. And finally, just one last barrier to mention on in this section, which we discovered particularly again in this research in Jordan and Lebanon, pertains particularly to some women who may choose to not move forward in the recruitment process as they may not want to travel alone if they're not married, or some of them in particular fields, for example, in nursing, are unwilling to work, with only male patients. Some might not want to be in an office with only male colleagues. There's also many of them noted that they wouldn't want to access the solution because even if they can bring their spouse and children along, they don't want to leave their elderly parents behind. So this is actually, specifically this point is one that we're actively working on right now, very seriously, and working with partners to try to unlock. But yes, so that's a summary for international recruitment. Moving on to skilled visa processing. I know we're running out a little bit of time, but so just to note, a very big issue for us is meeting language requirements. So every visa, or almost every visa that we're working with right now requires an IELTS level 4, which is generally a low intermediate level. As a result, when our team looks at our database in the beginning to find qualified candidates, around 70% of those with skills that match an opportunity and can definitely meet the job requirements, unfortunately don't get put forward simply because of this language requirement and the fact that they can't meet it for the visa. We had a PhD candidate in agriculture, for example, who was perfect for a job in Australia and was prevented from moving forward simply because he didn't have any level of English. And even for those who do make it through and eventually do get the job offer and are applying for their visa, a number of them just registering for the exam, so for the IELTS exam or any other standardized exam, can be quite a challenge if they don't have a valid passport. We've worked with partners, including the British Council, to overcome this on a case-by-case basis. But if a refugee were to want to sit an exam independently for a visa, they could potentially face hardships in doing that. Another issue is just lack of mobility, safe mobility during the visa stage to collect their documents, which is a requirement obviously for the visa. A number cited fear of leaving their house or neighborhood because they might get caught because they don't have legal residency. And this was a particular barrier in Lebanon. What's the last barrier to move on? Just in terms of exit and departure, there are a number of fines, again, specifically in Lebanon, at the moment, but also in Jordan, but very much prevalent in Lebanon, for those who didn't have legal residency that they have to pay for every year that they've been illegal in the country. There's also other refugees highlighted very confusing exit procedures by the local government, who often held their exit paperwork without cause and had them miss their flights as a result. A very big issue is lack of financing options available to them. So we've been working on this for quite a while at TBB and trying to think creatively about finding alternative financing options, while we try to have employers take on as much of the cost as possible, including the cost of the visa, relocation, temporary accommodation. In some cases, refugees will need to cover certain amounts of the relocation. This might include flights or COVID-19 tests or transportation fees. TBB is working right now with many partners that help cover these costs. But again, as we scale, we need definitely a better solution. And obviously refugees themselves don't have access to financing options in their host countries. So I know I've talked quite a bit. This is just a very small glimpse of a very long paper. But the paper does touch, after outlining all of these barriers, on a variety of recommendations for different actors, both at policy and operational level. Just a few, for example, from the policy end, we have recommendations that include a commitment to reduce visa processing times, to enable potentially dependents, including elderly parents, to be included in visas, specifically at the Jordan and Lebanon level, to remove exit fees for refugees traveling through labor mobility pathways altogether. Operationally, we suggest investing in more capacity building programs targeted towards international recruitment, as well as vocational programs where the curriculum lines up with labor demands. We also suggest creating a referral network among NGOs to enhance outreach, as well as to support identification of employable candidates. And I think I will stop there. Again, this was a very quick and brief glimpse of the report. We'll hopefully be sharing the comprehensive version very shortly. But with that, I'm moving on probably to the best part of this discussion, which is I have the honor of introducing Fadi Shiluhi, who was among one of our first beneficiaries to travel to Australia via labor mobility pathway. I'll leave him to provide the details of his story, but Fadi was previously stateless in Lebanon, and through our program and labor mobility scheme was able to get an offer from Accenture in Sydney, where he currently lives. And he's currently working as an associate manager and probably one of the most incredible motivational speakers I've ever met. So I'll pass it over to you, Fadi.
Thank you, Noura. You're so generous with your compliments. It's such an honor and a privilege to be with everyone. From my end here in Australia, I say good evening. Noura actually did a very good job in summarizing my story, but I felt it's good to add a bit of context to why I was stateless and how I ended up meeting Talent Beyond Boundaries. And I'll try my best to keep it under 5 minutes. So please, Patrirck, feel free to hold me accountable at any time. I was born in 23rd of January, 1990 to a Lebanese mother and a Syrian father. I was born in Lebanon. A couple of months after I was born, my father left without registering me. And unfortunately in Lebanon until today, women are not allowed to register their children, only men can. So my father wouldn't register me and my mother couldn't, which meant that I was born stateless and I was stateless for the majority of my life. Now, of course, the majority of you knows what it means to be stateless. Basically, I had no legal rights of any kind, no access to healthcare, no passport, no driver's license, no access to education. And to make things even worse, Lebanon never signed any UN conventions on statelessness, which meant from a legal point of view, I did not exist. If you shot me in the streets of Lebanon, you wouldn't even go to jail because legally speaking, you didn't shoot anyone. So I can only imagine how hard it was, not only for me, but for my mother as a single mother, uneducated, poor, raising a stateless child in Lebanon, not knowing what to do with him. I didn't even know I was stateless until I was 21 years old and I started doing my own research and asking questions and trying to figure out how to solve the situation. But fortunately for me, and unlike the 10 million plus stateless people around the world, I got a lot of breaks throughout my life that helped me become the man I am today and helped me arrive to Australia. And the first break I got was actually with education. Now, normally stateless people don't get educated. They don't even know how to read and write. No school ever allows them in. However, my mother was the cleaner at a local Catholic school. So she talked to the nuns and said, listen, all I want for my son is for him to learn how to read and write, just so he would have a fighting chance in life. Luckily, the nuns accepted, but they had one condition. Every time a public inspector would visit the school, I had to vanish, disappear. Because on that piece of paper, the classroom had 20 children. I was child number 21. I did not exist. But it worked. I was getting high quality, free, illegal education. And that served me until I was 13, 14 years old. But that presented itself with a different type of problem, high school. You see, in Lebanon, to go to high school, you need to pass a government test. And not only did I not have any legal documentation to take the test, all my previous academic records were not registered, which meant I was facing the harsh reality of having to drop out of school at the age of 13. But once again, luckily for me, and I always say this with a bit of hesitation because I understand not everyone's experience with the Catholic Church was a positive one. But for me, at least it was. The Archbishop of North Lebanon stepped up, and because Lebanon is highly influenced by religions, he issued a decree through the Catholic Church and the Catholic Court. Based on the fact I'm a baptized Catholic, the son of a baptized Catholic woman, I should be granted education on Lebanese soil. And with that piece of paper, I got access to high school and later on university. But the fact of the matter is, I was still stateless. And all my student cards and academic cards read something like this. First name Fadi, last name unknown, date of birth unknown, nationality unknown. So if you were a soldier on a roadblock in Lebanon and you come across a bus with someone holding that kind of identity card, you think to yourself, with jackpot, I just apprehended Lebanon's most wanted. And I got arrested so many times I lost count. Because as you know, Lebanon is a highly volatile place from a security point of view. We had radical terrorist groups, we had ISIS knocking on our doors. So soldiers were always on high alert. And I was easy pickings. Like, which embassy would I call when I got apprehended? No one, because I had no embassy. Fortunately for me, I managed to persevere, and I graduated with a master's degree in finance in 2012. But yet again, statelessness came back to haunt me. No one would hire me. Who would take a chance and legally hire someone who doesn't exist legally? I mean, every time I'll go to an interview, the same kind of process happens. It goes well, they ask me for my credentials, everything's running smoothly, but then they ask me for my driver's license or my passport or my ID. And I say, well, I don't have any, I'm stateless. And suddenly, their face change and that nice smile becomes a grim and I get rejected. I graduated in 2012 and I didn't start working properly with my career for almost 18 months. And that was by a friend who vouched for me with his employer and said, you need to listen to this guy's story. He deserves a chance. And after starting my career in around 2014 in a French software company, and I was being paid illegally under the table, and big kudos to the CEO of that company. He took a big chance on me. I stayed at that company for almost 3 years before in 2016, coming to a harsh realization of my reality. I was 26 at the time. I had no family because I recently lost my mother in 2015 to cancer. I had no siblings, no legal status, and I had no chance of ever acquiring any type of citizenship, nor the Syrian, nor the Lebanese. And after I came to that realization, I just vouched and made a promise to myself and to my mother that, yes, I was born stateless in Lebanon, and that wasn't my fault. But if I die stateless in Lebanon, well, that's on me. And this is where I opened my eyes to international possibilities. I started emailing embassies, NGOs, organizations. I spent almost a full year daily doing research and emailing any type of organization or embassy I could find. And what I loved about TBB is that throughout all of the replies I got, their reply was extremely unique. You see, every reply I got was extremely generic. Do you want food rations? Do you want any medical attention? Do you need any help? Do you need a place to sleep tonight? TBB asked me, can you share your CV? Do you have any education? Do you have any skills? Do you speak any foreign languages? And for the first time in my life, I thought that I was treated not like a charity case, but as an asset. And in 2016, what started as a small inquiry email, and later on, a couple of days later, meeting the wonderful Noura in person, led to a wonderful relationship with TBB. And with the help of Accenture, I came to Australia after 3 years. It took 3 years for us to find a legal pathway, which we'll explore later on as well, for me to finally come here to Australia. I landed in Australia in 2019 with the help of so many amazing people, and we actually did history together. Because when I landed here in Australia, I didn't land on a humanitarian visa, and I landed here on a skill shortage visa. It's the first stateless person in history to be issued a skill shortage visa. So history was made on that day, not just by TBB, but also by the Australian government and by Accenture, who for 2 years did not give up on me and tried everything within their power to help me legally come here to Australia. And I'm glad to share with the group that actually in November 2021, I got my permanent residency. So legally speaking, I am no longer stateless. And now the Australian citizenship is actually within sight. I'm a couple of months away from being eligible to apply. So it's been a hard journey. It's been a long journey, but with the help of so many amazing individuals like Noura, who really have been, and I speak a lot about Noura because Noura has been with me from the beginning. And when she talked about internet connection problems, when I was having the interview with Accenture, I lost connection briefly. And Noura's first reaction was she turned on her own private data and her own hotspot, and I managed to finish the interview. So Noura and every single person in TBB are extremely passionate and dedicated beyond what I can put into words. And you really need to work with them just to see their passion. And the fact that we have so many success stories in so many countries around the world is just a statement to the kind of dedication and professionalism that drives Talent Beyond Boundaries. And I'm just one of so many success stories, and hopefully there will be thousands more to come. Thank you.
Fadi, thank you so much for sharing. We've got not much time left, and I had a few questions, but I'm going to probably only focus on one. Kind of bringing it back, to the discussion we're having today. I suppose my question for you would be, what what would you say is the, if you had to say that the main barrier at the moment for refugees accessing these labor mobility pathways that, that you are able to access, from your experience, what would you say is the number one barrier?
I think it's the perspective. And I think this is where Talent Beyond Boundaries shine. They don't look at us as a liability. They look at us as an asset. And I think once we get so many employers and governments on board looking at us as an asset, things will be so much easier. I mean, when you pitch us to an employer or to a government, and rightly so, a lot of people might think, oh, these are refugees, they're coming here, they're going to be such a financial gauntlet to help them and set them up. But the truth of the matter is, we acquired this kind of tag, a refugee, for example, over the last 18 months. But if you look over the last 18 years, for example, these have been successful professionals in their kind of careers. They had amazing skills and experience that has built up for the last 2 or 3 decades. And the fact that we only focus on that tag that was given to them because of circumstances outside of their hands over the last 10 months is such a shame. And if we can use TBB's lens and look at them from an asset liability, everyone will facilitate it for them and everything will run extremely more smoothly. That's what I think is the biggest hurdle at the moment, the lens in which we look at refugees and status people.
No, understood. And I'm going to be cheeky and just squeeze in one last question. And I'll try and make it quick. So I suppose just looking at on the employer side, Noura touched upon it, and I mentioned it is an employer-driven model. From your perspective, what best practices would you recommend for employers who are considering hiring displaced talent?
I would recommend the same practice that Accenture used with me. Don't treat me as a charity case. Don't treat these people as, this thing that they should be grateful or they're special or, they're coming from a different kind of species, or no, treat them as a normal employee. And that's exactly how I was treated. I got the same kind of orientation course like every other employee. I was put on a project like any other consultant with Accenture. I have my own chargeability goals like any other, Accenture employee. I need to get my billable hours. As you know, I worked hard, long hours like everyone else. They didn't pull any punches, and I respected that. Because you can ask any candidate on that list. The one thing they want is to live with dignity and live with pride. We're not asking for charity. We're not asking for handouts. When we work so hard to get a master's degree in finance or a doctorate, or work so hard to acquire experience over 5 years, it's because we want to use that to earn our living with pride and live with dignity. So that's the best approach they can take. Don't treat them in any way special. We're resilient. We've been through enough. We just want to be treated normally, and we want to earn our keep and prove that we deserve the right to be
here. Fadi, thank you. Thank you, sincerely, for joining us and sharing. And I think we could talk to you for hours. Yeah, thank you so much for being here today. I'm just really conscious of time. We've got not too long left, and we do want to kind of quickly break out into some breakout rooms and really to have a 8 to 10 minute discussion. I know that we could again probably talk a lot longer, but really kind of pulling together some of the things that we've spoke about, really, what Noura shared and some of that research and some of the themes that Fadi spoke about as well now. And there's going to be 3 key questions in the groups. The first is, and Fadi just shared one now, which I thought was really important, but what is the number one barrier that we think is for refugees accessing labour mobility pathways? Number 2, what is a solution to overcoming that barrier that you identified? And then thirdly, how do we incorporate that solution into program design when we think about the current programs that we spoke about, but also when we're thinking about new destination countries to open up? The goal here really is, how do we scale this as much as possible? How do we grow this solution? So what is the barrier? What is the solution? And how do we incorporate that into the program design? So if we can, as I said, take 10 minutes or so to have a quick discussion. There'll be a facilitator in each group, and then we'll regroup just for 5 minutes after.
Hi guys, the other ones that are not yet in the breakout rooms, can you join them by clicking on the box that you received?
No, we got no box, Sonia. I didn't get anything.
I know that you, Lana, Anna, and Steve didn't get, but the other people.
Resni, did you get a? Okay, I'll just join one.
Yeah, join one.
Resni, you need to join the group. Resni, okay, he's gone. Okay. Oh, Sonia, Resni's in two groups because he has two. So he's in group 3. Take him out of that one.
Oh,
So okay, just leave him. It's fine. So
oh, okay.
okay, perfect. It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'll join 4 because there's only 2 people in group 4.
Yes, group. Then if you can do that, that's great.
Group 4. Oh, the numbers. Okay, I'll join 4.
think we're all back. Coming back in. We in our group, Sandra was talking and she got cut off halfway through, so sorry. we got quite engaged in the session. Great. I know we've only got 10 minutes left or so, so there's a mural board, and I'm gonna self-confess we haven't written on it, so we will write on our group after, and then we can share it, so it's up to date and tidied for everyone. But let's just take maybe a few minutes for each group to maybe share the number one barrier, a solution, and then how they would implement that into the program design. So let's start with the third group. Who was group number 3? Oh. Any volunteers? Group number 3 or group number 2? Who's group number 2?
Or group number 2.
Yeah.
Should I go for it, or
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So we had a lot of great ideas. Kind of the main barrier that was identified was refugees themselves having trouble finding job opportunities independently. And also proving their skills to the employer directly. One was noting that, his skills aren't related to his actual education. So how do you kind of exemplify that or show your skills directly to anyone that wants to recruit you? So the solution was trying to find a way to showcase skills directly that are not just, it's not just through a CV, but finding other ways to do that. And the program design was kind of working through some sort of innovative tech. So whether it be through video or some other means where candidates can directly show their skills to the employer and prove what they can do so that they can stand out and again, transcend just this piece of paper of a CV. There's also a note, maybe we can incorporate some AI to show categories so that of candidates, so that employers can see, a subset at a time and not get overwhelmed.
So, thanks, Noura. Group number 1. Who was in group number 1? I think so. Maureen, were you in group number 1?
I was in group number 1.
Fadi, over to you, sir.
We actually came up with a lot of ideas, but I think the number one reason we believe is a prejudice. People have this misconception when you say stateless or you say refugee, even if you go on Google search engine, right, type stateless people, you'll see just people living in tents or running for their lives. And it's that misconception that this is it. This is their entire tag. This is what all these people are, which I'm part of. It's a liability. And the way we need to flip the script in a way or change the narrative is to have a lot of orientation and basically help these employers and even governments look at that from their perspective and put themselves in our shoes in a way. Every single person potentially on this call, have their own routine, have their favorite coffees, they have their careers, they have their 5-year plan, 10-year plan. And if they can stop for a second and imagine what would happen if within 48 hours their country is being invaded or there is a civil war and their favorite coffee does longer exist, their company went out of business, there's a hyperinflation, they have to flee their country and just find themselves in a foreign country that potentially doesn't want them there, living in a refugee tent, and all of their skills as time goes by are fading away, they're becoming irrelevant in their fields. And when you just put yourself in that perspective just for a second and look and just try to understand how hard it is, maybe I think people will be more open to the idea of thinking of refugees as just normal people who are just facing some unforeseen circumstances and they're just looking for a chance to resume that normal lives that we all have and we take for granted.
Fadi, what about the program design there?
Program design, I think, and I don't know, potentially TBB already have that, so apologies if I missed it. Maybe add a lot of orientation where, take a lot of these true stories, not just the success stories, but maybe share the stories of people who are still stuck in those refugee tents, or share the stories about people, how their lives was before they ended up in a refugee tent. So people can see the similarities. So, let's say you're pitching to Google, bring a couple of, software engineers who are currently stuck in a refugee tent and let them talk about the kind of coding they were doing or the kind of career they had before they ended up there. So that recruiter sitting on the other side would say, oh, wow, he's using the same codes I use, or, he had a similar career aspiration as me. He used the same laptop as me. I had a Dell, I have a Dell now. And then switch over to a refugee tent where he's currently living. And so that recruiter would see, oh, wow, that could have been me. And instead of having a Dell and learning a code, I'm now, striving to survive day after day, relying on UN rations to basically just, survive. So showing that perspective, because it's not just focusing on success stories, focusing on the origin stories, to remind people that just a couple of months or a couple of years ago, these are just normal people like you and me, trying to have a career and trying to carve their ways through life.
Terrific, thank you. I'll jump in. I think we were actually the third group. So I'll share what we discussed. We said one of the main hurdles is candidates. The candidates that we work with are very, very, very skilled. I think that's evident, and we all agree. But sometimes they may not be what we determine, maybe job ready, because they would have had a period of time outside where they haven't worked and they've been displaced for a period of time. And it's how do we bridge that gap with employer expectations and making the candidates feel confident as well when they go for the interviews, so that actually, and I think Fadi's touched on a lot of this today, that actually you have those skills and you should feel confident to have that interview. But also there may be a period of time where maybe they do need to there is a knowledge gap because they've been out of work for a period of time. And how do we bridge that as well, knowing that we have a skilled candidate? So it's that making job ready is what we said. And, a couple of things, that really making sure that we have a robust mock interview process so that candidates, really those who need it, have access to speaking with those who are UK, Canadian, Australian employers, and they can say, actually, it's a bit different here. This is the type of questions that you're going to be asked, and so that people aren't caught off guard. And then thinking about more substantive training, whether it's tech or other areas, and making that acknowledging that gap and saying someone may not have there may be a gap on their resume because they haven't worked for 4 years or 3 years, and whether it's an academy or online courses, whatever it may be, just working with other partners to do trainings to help. And then in terms of, we didn't really kind of get onto program design, but we did speak about tech being a part of that, and broadening access to partners and services for those trainings, but then also thinking about more concessions under these visa policy. And Noura kind of touched upon this when she was sharing her slides earlier about when we're looking at new destination countries, having those concessions. Someone like Canada has some good ones, but maybe a candidate may not meet the work experience requirement because they couldn't have worked during that time due to their circumstances, and having some built-in flexibilities around that and acknowledging it. I believe they were all the breakout rooms, unless I'm mistaken. Lorraine, correct me if I'm wrong.
We had one more.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Which was me. And I'll be very quickly, I know we're running out of time. It was just about HR, and Tom Resney and I was saying that HR often is a problem. They place people in boxes, and how can we educate HR to not see the people being hired as a risk, and I guess the design feature would be to educate HR and specifically focus on HR and the HR an advocate of the employee and not an advocate of the company, not only looking after the company's interests, but also the interests of the employees. And of course, having a talented person, regardless of what political label they have, is in the interest of the employee. So that was our.
Fantastic. Great one to end on. We are coming up to time, so I'm gonna, we'll close out now. I just want to say a huge thank you to Fadi and for Noura for helping today in terms of the presentation, and for everyone for joining. I felt like actually when I first spoke to Lorraine, she said, it should be an hour and a half, and I said, well, we'll try for an hour, but now I think we could have done for 2 hours on this topic. I really do. So lesson learned for next time, but we will share the mural board and our slides, and yeah, thank you for everyone for joining this really important topic, and we will certainly come back and regroup, and we'll let you know through our social media, as Noura said, about the research that will be published next month. So yeah, stay tuned on that, and yeah, wishing everyone well, and just a huge thank you for joining and participating. And I'll hand over to Lorraine to make some closing comments.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't want to keep everyone here too long. Oh, my text didn't go through. So thank you all for being here. We had a really fascinating discussion. I wish we made it an hour and a half. I wish we listened to me initially, Patrirck, but next time. Thank you all. Please sign in for some more sessions. Tomorrow we have a session on the right to work for refugees. And this is something which is quite crucial because it really links to what TBB is doing. How can we get refugees working so that when they come to TBB to be relocated, they have the work experience so they can get those jobs. So in a way, addressing a lot of these issues that that you guys spoke about. So please join us tomorrow for that session and for the rest of the summit. Thank you. And otherwise, thank you, Noura. Thank you, Patrirck. And Fadi, thank you. Fadi, maybe we want to invite you for our closing session. You were so inspirational, so powerful. You're part of our community. Welcome. And sorry, we're sort of taking him aboard and sort of adopting him as part of our community as well, guys. Thank you, everyone, for this fantastic session. And we'll see you soon with another session in an hour. See you all soon. Bye.